1 Chronicles 22, 1 through 19. Devotional focus verse. Now set your heart and your soul to seek the Lord your God. Arise, therefore, and build ye the sanctuary of the Lord God, to bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and the holy vessels of God, into the house that is to be built to the name of the Lord. 1 Chronicles 22, 19. What does it mean to set ourselves to accomplish something? I pondered that question as I read today's focus verse, which begins with the instruction to set your heart and your soul to seek the Lord your God. Initially, the word set made me think of setting the font specifications on the word processing program I am using to write this devotional. Like most software applications, my program came with established defaults. Its default font is Times New Roman, and the font size is 12 points. However, I can change those specifications to a sans serif option like Arial or Futura, or a script such as Lucida Calligraphy or the ever so elegant Scriptina. I can increase the font size from 12 points to 10 times that or more. Until I do, though, this document and any others I compose will appear in Times New Roman, size 12, every time. Action is required to make a change. Set sometimes is used as a verb, a word that indicates action. In our focus verse, the instruction to set your heart and your soul implied an action that needed to be taken. David was encouraging the national and tribal leaders of Israel to fix their hearts upon seeking the Lord for strength and a determination to focus upon fulfilling His instructions. This would enable these leaders to assist David's son Solomon in the construction of a sanctuary for the Lord, a monumental task in spite of the preparatory steps David had taken. Have we set our hearts and souls on seeking the Lord? Have we resolved to pursue His purpose in our lives? That will not just naturally happen. We come into this world with spiritual default settings that determine nearly every aspect of how we operate, and those settings reveal an innate compulsion towards sin and self-will. Until the sinful nature we were born with is changed, our focus will not be upon God and the furtherance of His kingdom, but upon our personal needs, desires, and preferences. To be able to do God's will or accomplish His plan for our lives will require a reset. And while we have the ability to change defaults on our software applications and electronic devices, only God can change hearts. The national leaders of King David's day had to make a choice as to whether they would do as he instructed. Today, we too must choose. Are we resolved to set our hearts to seek God and fulfill His purpose for our lives? We can be. Background information. Chapter 22 of 1 Chronicles continues the description of David's preparations for building the temple that began in chapter 21. In verses 1 through 5 of this chapter, David chose the temple site, the parcel of land he had purchased from Ornan the Jebusite in the previous chapter, and began preparing materials for construction of the house of the Lord. He charged his son Solomon with the task of building the house, see verses 6 through 16, and exhorted the national and tribal leaders of the land to assist his son with the project, see verses 17 through 19. The strangers in the land, referred to in verse 2, were non-Israelites, probably the Canaanites, who were servants and paid tribute to Solomon as he began the building project. See 2 Chronicles 8, 7 through 9. The Zidonians, alluded to in verse 4, were from Sidon, now part of southern Lebanon. The cedar trees in abundance, mentioned in verse 4, likely came from Hiram, king of Tyre, which is also in southern Lebanon now. The cedar trees of Lebanon were renowned for their excellent timber. This indicates that David, and Solomon after him, wanted to build the temple out of the best materials possible. In verse 5, the fact that David accepted God's pronouncement that he would not be the one to oversee the construction of the temple is seen in the fact that he still prepared abundantly for the project. He amassed great stockpiles of materials. His determination that the house must be exceeding magnifical, of fame and of glory throughout all countries, is evidence of his desire to honor God. The prophet Nathan had revealed earlier that one of David's sons would build the temple. See 1 Chronicles 17:11 through 12. Verses 5 through 6 of this chapter indicate that the son chosen for this task was Solomon, whom David commissioned in verses 6 through 16. This was not a suggestion or an idea offered to Solomon for his consideration. It was a sacred responsibility for him to fulfill. This was an initial charge. David's formal and public charge to Solomon is recorded in chapter 28. After David gave his charge to Solomon, he spoke to civil and military leaders of Israel and exhorted them to give their full support to Solomon as he undertook the task of building the temple. Conclusion. Doing God's will requires total dedication, a focused determination to obey Him with all our hearts and souls. When we set ourselves to seek Him in that way, He will provide the strength, grace, and abilities we need to accomplish whatever tasks He has given us.
1 Chronicles chapter 22. Then David said, "This is the house of the Lord God, and this is the altar of the burnt offering for Israel." And David commanded to gather together the strangers that were in the land of Israel, and he set masons to hew wrought stones to build the house of God. And David prepared iron in abundance for the nails for the doors of the gates, and for the joinings, and brass in abundance without weight. Also cedar trees in abundance, for the Zidonians and they of Tyre brought much cedar wood to David. And David said, "Solomon my son is young and tender, and the house that is to be builded for the Lord must be exceeding magnifical, of fame and of glory throughout all countries. I will therefore now make preparation for it." So David prepared abundantly before his death. Then he called for Solomon his son, and charged him to build an house for the Lord God of Israel. And David said to Solomon, "My son, as for me, it was in my mind to build an house unto the name of the Lord my God. But the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Thou hast shed blood abundantly, and hast made great wars, thou shalt not build an house unto my name, because thou hast shed much blood upon the earth in my sight. Behold, a son shall be born to thee, who shall be a man of rest, and I will give him rest from all his enemies round about, for his name shall be Solomon, and I will give peace and quietness unto Israel in his days. He shall build an house for my name, and he shall be my son, and I will be his father, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom over Israel forever. Now, my son, the Lord be with thee, and prosper thou, and build the house of the Lord thy God, as he hath said of thee. Only the Lord give thee wisdom and understanding, and give thee charge concerning Israel, that thou mayest keep the law of the Lord thy God. Then shalt thou prosper, if thou takest heed to fulfill the statutes and judgments which the Lord charged Moses with concerning Israel. Be strong, and of good courage, dread not, nor be dismayed. Now, behold, in my trouble I have prepared for the house of the Lord 100,000 talents of gold, and 1,000,000 talents of silver, and of brass and iron without weight, for it is in abundance. Timber also and stone have I prepared, and thou mayest add thereto. Moreover there are workmen with thee in abundance, hewers and workers of stone and timber, and all manner of cunning men for every manner of work. Of the gold, the silver, and the brass, and the iron, there is no number. Arise therefore, and be doing, and the Lord be with thee. David also commanded all the princes of Israel to help Solomon his son, saying, Is not the Lord your God with you? And hath he not given you rest on every side? For he hath given the inhabitants of the land into mine hand, and the land is subdued before the Lord, and before his people. Now set your heart and your soul to seek the Lord your God. Arise therefore, and build ye the sanctuary of the Lord God, to bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and the holy vessels of God, into the house that is to be built to the name of the Lord,